Chapter 76 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 76. Dr. Juno and Lucinda Armington Making Love. Dear precious Victor, although our nuptials were interrupted last night, and your dear life was in great danger, but, as the old saying is, a miss is as good as a mile, and I am so thankful to God that your great and noble heart was missed. If we had no trials and deprivations, we might not appreciate the gifts of heaven as much as you and I do under the various perilous circumstances through which we have passed. Don't you think so?" said Lucinda, with her heaven-blue eyes full of animated love and fire. "My dear darling angel, in one sense you are right, but in another wrong," replied Victor. "For instance, if we were perfect, entirely perfect naturalists, and were surrounded by similar creatures, it would not enhance our joy to be persecuted, tortured, and libeled. But as long as we are far from being perfect naturalists, and are neither surrounded by such, we have not the capacity of appreciating God's last and noblest piece of mechanism, without being stimulated by the undulations in life's great battle. Therefore, precious Lucinda, we sinful creatures are benefited by great contrasts. But if we really were the purified temples of God, we would love him with all our strength, and one another as ourselves, which was the hallowed rule that the blessed, loving, and beloved naturalist, Jesus Christ, laid down for us. Love, immaculate love, unalloyed by self, should be the only law that real naturalists or Christians should learn to understand, possess, and obey. But as the means are not used to gain this end, we as a nation can never fully appreciate God's goodness toward the highest type of his mechanism." "But, dear Victor, do you not love me more than a perfect naturalist would love his neighbor, as Jesus says?" asked she. "Do you suppose, my most precious darling, that I could love you more than, or even as much, as Christ loved the world? Not that he loved the evil ways of sinners, but he loved sinners, because they were part and parcel of the Creator. And although he denounced the selfish, self-righteous, self-willed, and haughty viper, who had only a whit of God's vitality in him, Christ did not turn away from those who were born and bred under morbid circumstances, visiting thereby upon the human species weaknesses over which they had no control. By looking over all the teachings, acts, and life of Christ, you will behold what powerful love he possessed for the passive sinner, for the sinner who was penitent, who was willing to learn and live out God's fixed laws, and by love, as we claim to heed the many admonitions that God alone is just, we can appreciate his highest law the more, namely, love. Do you not think so?" "Indeed, indeed I do. And I love you so much more when I see that your noble mind is fairly wrapped up in the great science of human life, and in the Herculean effort of perpetuating it everlastingly. What a crown you will have laid up in heaven for yourself by this noble and godlike work in which you have been engaged all your life, through calm and storm, in spite of opposition, persecution, and martyrdom. Who that possessed any good sense could fail to love you, to almost revere and idolize you as I do?" ejaculated Lucinda, with a serenity of expression that almost excelled the archangel's. "I devoutly praise the Lord for your appreciation of my love, which you have so tenderly, earnestly, ardently, and innocently expressed. It vitalizes every fibre that has been wounded by that assassin, and it makes me almost love the hand that brought me to this sick-bed, where I have learned to love whatever partakes of God's vitality," said Victor. "Oh, Victor, most glorious Victor! I cannot help realizing that you possess a Christ-like heart," interposed she, "for you would pardon this person, I believe, who has within a hair's breadth taken your precious life, if she would ask for forgiveness." "She," said he. "What do you mean by she? It is not possible that a woman fired that bullet at me." "Yes, dearest love, it was a woman," responded she. "God forgive the woman," sighed he. "I am not so sure that He will forgive her, unless she changes her course of conduct," responded Lucinda. "Who was she? What is her name?" asked he. "It was Miss Nancy Clover," said she. "Nancy Clover!" ejaculated he. "Yes, that fiend," said Lucinda. "Well, well, these bloody conspirators are becoming desperate," said he. "But let us not discuss disagreeable things, but let me tell you of my love for you, my saint." "Oh, do, exquisite Victor," interposed she. "I love you with a love that passes not away with a man's passion, but a love that is registered in the book of life, a treasure in heaven, where my heart is also. Hence it can never fail, can never lose its ardor. And when once legitimately centered upon the normal propensities, I hope will magnetize the physical organism to perfection, that will cause the elements of human life to flow with the extremest mental joys and physical pleasures in the consummation of the command to increase and multiply in the blessed image of God." "Darling, you speak beautifully, but I cannot say that I comprehend you exactly," modestly exclaimed she. "Oh, never mind. You will understand all in due time, and be blessed, I think, with those blessed gifts of which Christ says, 'For of such is the kingdom of heaven,'" said Victor, when she laid her head on his breast and their souls bled with joy. These lovers were continually together until Dr. Juno was able to go about his business. They postponed their wedding day for a month, and in the meantime were in good spirits. But Miss Armington was convinced in her own mind that war would break out before their wedding day would arrive, when a further postponement would be necessary. She did not look upon the dark side of the picture, neither did she desire to put gloomy feelings before the mind of her beloved Victor, who needed encouragement just then to assist his cure. But she saw war, cruel, terrible war, a civil war which would subjugate the sovereign people of America, and give the spirit of selfishness and Antichrist sole control of Church and State. End of chapter 76.
Chapter 77 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Pat Navarre. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 77. Congress Mobbed for Recognizing God in the Constitution. When the religious people found that Miss Nancy Clover was cast into prison, they went unanimously to work to have her freed on bail. And as Dr. Juno improved very rapidly, having not at any time been in danger of losing his life by the pistol wound, on account of having had too healthy blood and solid bodily tissues, therefore nothing but the penetration of a vital organ could have caused his death. She was allowed to enter $20,000 security for her appearance at court, and when she was again at liberty she created a terrific stir throughout the Orthodox community. Hence a feeler was thrown out by the saints. They petitioned the United States Congress, which was in session, in the strongest terms, demanding that God should be recognized in the Constitution of the United States. The following were the leading points, which fairly broke the camel's back. We, the evangelical religious denominations of the United States, hereby petition to the 60 members of Congress to enact a law whereby the Constitution of the United States be instantly amended as follows. Whereas numerous blasphemous and Sabbath-breaking organizations are regularly holding secret meetings throughout the country for the purpose of desecrating the Lord's day and subverting the holy religion of the Lord Jesus Christ. And, whereas a certain innovator has violated the most sacred institutions and holy rights of God's elect by riot and bloodshed, and whereas this outlaw threatens to mob the holy saints and is already so great a terror to the nation that public officials everywhere dare not enforce the laws against him, therefore be it resolved that the holy religion of the Lord Jesus Christ be acknowledged in the Constitution of the United States, and it is hereby enacted and ratified by the majority of the members in Congress assembled that, firstly, no one shall be allowed to preach the gospel of Christ who has not been regularly ordained in some orthodox evangelical denomination, and secondly, that no ordained preacher shall be allowed to preach as a minister of the gospel or perform similar functions who is not in good standing in a regular evangelical church organization, and, thirdly, that the Sabbath day shall be kept as the Lord's day, in which no secular or worldly work, business, or recreation shall be allowed to be performed, and fourthly, that every citizen shall attend once on each Lord's day, unless too ill to go, some evangelical church that is in good standing, and fifthly, that each and every evangelical denomination shall have to undergo annually an examination by a board of censors, which board of censors shall be composed of one or more of the leading officers, bishop, priest, elder, deacon, etc., of each evangelical denomination, and sixthly, that all children, as soon as old enough to understand their paternal dialect, shall each Sabbath day attend some evangelical Sabbath school, where the Holy Bible is read and taught, and seventhly, that all other worship claiming to be religion shall be suppressed, and its leaders shall be tried by a jury of 12 evangelical Christians, who are of good standing in some evangelical church of good repute, and if found guilty of violating one or all of said ordinances, herein expressed, shall suffer the penalty of death by hanging. And eighthly, that this amendment shall instantly take effect, and that each informer on an innovator and violator of said constitutional amendment shall receive from the Treasury of the United States as reward $1,000, one half of which he shall donate to the church of which he is a member, and the same shall be so recorded on the church book, and shall be accounted reward laid up in heaven. The foregoing amendment scheme was a feeler, which met with favor at the Capitol of the United States, where ink-sucking scoundrels had 2/3 of a majority, and who were ready for anything that placed filthy lucre into their pockets. This the evangelical amenders knew, hence instantly raised $100 millions, which was divided between the lucre-seeking legislators, and which gave the sovereign working people, who were taxed in the long run for every cent of this money, a loathing for the whole batch of usurpers and cutthroats. And as soon as the amendment was announced as having passed, an army of naturalists were found surrounding the Capitol at Washington, D.C., who opened up a terrific fire with shot and shell upon the building wherein Congress sat, which caused the bribed scoundrels to scatter, some endeavoring to escape through the lines of the soldiers, who were shot down like brutes, whilst others hid in the cellar, in niches and corners of the great marble structure. But all this availed them nothing, because every man who voted for the amendment was killed in less than 10 hours. The President telegraphed to the governor of each state to send on all the militia that could be mustered, as a furious war had commenced, which required every available means to subdue. But only 3 governors responded to this call. End chapter. Chapter 78 of the Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Pat Navarre. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 78, Dr. Juno's First Great War Proclamation. When the newspapers all over the Union had published this unconstitutional amendment, It aroused the masses amazingly. Even those who formerly had no sympathy with Dr. Juno, nor love for his doctrines, now freely investigated his teachings. And almost like magic, he became the accepted heroic reformer of the close of the 19th century. In fact, the orthodox public press all over the country disapproved of the course which Congress had taken because this usurpation came too close home to many, who were willing to ride on the backs of sectarians and politicians, so long as it paid them and their precious rights were not too closely clipped. But this amendment their own scribes stigmatized as a dangerous usurpation that cannot be tolerated in this nation. This was throwing fuel upon Dr. Juno's hearth, and he was wise enough to see it, and made capital of it by issuing the following proclamation. Fellow citizens, from the condition of things in general, I am constrained to issue this, my first proclamation to the people of the United States of America. Firstly, I ask each one, male and female of all colors and nations, who reside within the jurisdiction of the United States, to join the naturalists, who inculcate the observation of all natural laws, and have but one faith, one God, and are members of one family, whose highest law is love to God and man, whose aim is happiness, whose end is universal salvation by a return to and obedience of the Creator's fixed natural injunctions. Secondly, I offer protection to all people who are opposed to the power that money and lucre-gained positions wield, who are opposed to sectarian and political cliques and rings, and have recently shown to the world, by a constitutional amendment, what I have always said they would do if permitted, and you, the sovereign people, the bone and sinew of America, have, by your unconcerned silence and forbearance, given them permission to place scoundrels into all the high positions of church and state, which was giving them the power to cut down your inalienable rights to serve God according to the dictates of conscience, and to keep science from the field of human life. Thirdly, I also offer succor to the people who will, in this hour of war, aid us in slaying and subjugating these criminals, who have stolen the livery of heaven to serve the devil in, no matter whether such people are Jews, Gentiles, Protestants, Catholics, or worldlings, and if after they are vanquished and peace is declared, the said Jews, Gentiles, Protestants, Catholics, or worldlings cannot conscientiously join the naturalists, they shall not be molested in thinking and acting as they choose, so long as they do not become a nuisance, an injury, and meddlers in our affairs. Fourthly, I proclaim that no more dishonest men or women shall hold any office in the United States so long as I have influence enough to prevent it. But I claim that if my doctrines, as laid down in the 42nd chapter of this truthful novel, were observed, by making an amendment to the Constitution of the United States that no man shall become a millionaire, whilst thereby hundreds are made paupers, dishonest officials would naturally become obsolete, when a healthier state of affairs would reign, and plenty of time would be afforded every one to devote himself and herself to pleasant and rational enjoyment, which would make earth heavenly, a thing that these vipers and constitutional usurpers would deprive every person from doing by their selfish antichrist and anti-natural dictations. Fifthly, I would kindly hint that there is now left only one of two things. First, join us in conquering the usurpers and bloody conspirators, and remain free to serve God according to the dictation of conscience. Or, second, remain passive or neutral in this conflict, and thereby without action aid those who would rob us of all our property, of our natural rights, of our salvation, and call it the piety of the elect, from which, great Lord, deliver us. I appeal in conclusion to all the people to seriously pause before they cast their lot with the destroyers of every liberty and comfort that God and a sound physiology have vouchsafed unto every human soul. I pray all the people for their children's and grandchildren's sake, and for the sake of God and the angels, to assist us in subjugating our enemies, when war, rumors of war, famine, pestilence, and hard times would come no more, when all sorts of slavery, all sorts of selfishness, usurpation, and anarchy would take wings and fly to the infernal realms of damnation. In the name of God and man, I hereunto set my hand and seal. This day of 1900, Victor Juno. It was astonishing to see the effect this proclamation had upon the masses of the people, and it was still more astounding to see that every newspaper, daily, weekly, and monthly, published it. Some of the most bitter orthodox papers published it as a presumptuous and wrath-exciting document, hoping by doing so they would rile and arouse the people in their favor, whilst others inserted it for fear its omissions might create an onslaught upon them. Many of these people, Pharisee-like, a la Rev. Joe Pier, were afraid to die in their hardened sectarian sinfulness. Therefore they would do, on such occasions, as they were taught, by precept and example, by their blind leaders to do all their lives, namely, act the hypocrite. If they were experts in nothing else, they were in hypocrisy. A poor wind that does not blow someone good is an old saying, and I might apply it to the traitors of all countries and nations, who betrayed either party for gain of some kind, and to gain an extended lease of life was a sweet balm of Gilead to treacherous cowards, knaves, and hypocrites. End chapter.
Chapter 79 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 79. Dr. Juno's Terrible Army Orders. Now, cruel war was fairly in operation when the wedding day of Victor and Lucinda had to be again postponed, as Dr. Victor Juno was the chief general, and in fact father of the naturalists, who instituted this revolution that now called him into the field of terror. General Washington Armington, who was a powerful and eminently popular tactician, having earned a world-renowned fame in the War of Mexico and in the more recent rebellion with the Southern Confederacy, was second in command to Dr. Juno. And as the former was the intended father-in-law of the latter, they were sworn friends, who wielded a talismanic influence at home, where they were best known. Harry Gossamer, the was-to-be-drowned conspirator, who labored in the West under an assumed name, but for convenience sake we call him by his own name, General Harry Gossamer, led a Western army into Washington, where the war was commenced, and generaled the successful attack upon the bribed and cowardly congressman, but who was driven speedily westward by the militia, who obeyed the President's call. Dr. Juno now took the field, and moved instantly into the rear of the conspirators' army that drove General Gossamer westward, and on reaching the country through which the armies had passed, Dr. Juno issued the following: "To the sovereign, God-fearing, and loving people I issue this order, with a determination to carry it out to the letter. First, all persons who aid the army of the conspirators shall be considered as the allies of the enemies of the working people. Second, all the enemies to the working classes and naturalists shall be shot, unless they were forced to take up arms, and when taken prisoners must at once be sworn into the army of the naturalists, and enter their ranks or be shot on the spot. Third, the sick and wounded of the enemy shall be humanely cared for until well enough to take our oath of allegiance, and when sufficiently recovered shall take the field against the conspirators or be shot. Fourth, no distinction shall be made between the sexes, so far as our enemies are concerned, but little children alone shall be kindly and tenderly guarded and protected, no matter who are the parents, for they have had no choice in the conflict, have no voice. Hence must be cared for. This is peremptory. Females are not compelled to take up arms, but they must take positive sides, and be treated as friends or enemies, and if enemies, must be shot the same as men for their disloyalty to the natural cause of the producers. Fifth, this war was not our production, but we were compelled to strike for God and mankind, or suffer the devil to swallow us and our descendants up in victory. Therefore, we are in favor of being as cruel as we can be to our enemies, for the purpose of giving them the sooner a surfeit of rebellion to God and mankind. Sixth, we await with open arms the return of the prodigals, or we shall wave the black flag over their heads. War knows nothing but cruelty and death to the foe, and on these principles has this strife been inaugurated by the bloody conspirators, and on the same platform it shall be carried on and ended. My soldiers will promptly execute every part of my first proclamation, and this my first army order. Given at headquarters of the Army of the Naturalists, this 6th day of blank, 19 blank, by Victor Juno. When this army order was published, many said that General Juno could never raise an army under such discipline that would be able to cope with the army of the orthodox people. Moreover, that thousands would not join his cause that would have done so had he accepted the customary course that is pursued in time of war. But Dr. Juno was an original man, and knew what he was doing. It was a great mistake on the part of the sectarian conspirators to flatter themselves that any such cruelly stringent orders from Dr. Juno would prevent him from having a sufficiently numerous army and navy to enforce his commands. But his enemies did not know that all the secret beneficial societies throughout the United States and even Canada were a unit in fighting for the working people's cause, which Dr. Juno espoused. Therefore, when the tyrant, Juno, as he was called, wanted more men, all he had to do was to say so, and on all occasions and in every part of the country they came forth equipped and drilled soldiers. This amazed the orthodox advocates, whilst it frightened thousands so badly that they esteemed General Juno as a man of talismanic powers, whose will and orders dared not be opposed with impunity. Still the orthodoxy had the most money, hence could buy enough drunken and daredevil men to make up an immensely numerous army and navy, far outnumbering the naturalist soldiers. But the purchased men fought for gain, and not for principle, and constituted a dissipated and drunken army and navy, whose leading officers often were dead drunk when the most fierce battles raged. On the other hand, General Juno's army and navy was composed of men who fought for principle, and who had been the bone and sinew of the nation from their birth, therefore the following. Army Order No. 2 of the Naturalists. To the soldiers and marines of the Naturalists. I have simply to say that they shall be fed on the best fruits, grains, vegetables, and lean herbivorous meat that the country can afford. Those who remain at home, except the little children, shall live on the poorest food, whilst you will have the very best, which is necessary to carry you through the war with safety. Water and pure liquors are the only admissible beverages, and the latter shall only be used as stimulants and medicines by those who have been in the habit of the vice of stimulating. The physicians will see who needs the pure liquors. Clothing, blankets, and general equipments shall also be the best in the land, but no fashionable and useless display shall be tolerated. Tobacco, spices, drugs, and other delicacies shall not be admissible under any pretext, and our hygienic, medical, and surgical treatment will furnish better remedies. Every secret beneficial society has had several men and women educated as physicians and surgeons, who understand the law of cure or law of growth. Therefore our soldiers and marines shall be killed in battle only, and not in hospitals by charlatans. By treating our soldiers and marines to food and drink that makes nothing but pure blood and solid nerves, flesh and bones, their wounds will heal like magic. Hence we have no dead weight on our hands, but having 2/3 of them in hospitals. Nor will we have any prisoners of war to guard and feed, because we send them as sworn soldiers into our ranks, or shoot them charitably, ending their lives hastily. Given at headquarters of the Army of the Naturalists, this blank of blank, 19 blank, by Victor Juno. End of chapter 79. Chapter 80 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 80. Retaliatory Measures of the Conspirators' Army. When the Army and Navy of the conspirators became acquainted with the Black Flag Order by Dr. Juno, they appealed to their officers for the privilege of retaliating by not giving any quarters to the naturalists. To this the officers did not object in the least, but were rather pleased with the idea of summary retaliation, forgetting that such a course of license to a drunken, paid and daredevil army of men was a dangerous pretext, dangerous to their own safety and the safety of their own people, because such privileged license was only proper with men who fought for principle, fought for what they loved and knew was right. This privilege of retaliation, granted to an army and navy of men that were not interested in the cause for which they fought for lucre, could easily be turned to advantage against their own employers, provided insults were offered these soldiers and marines, or if a chance for greater gain of money could be obtained. They would carry their retaliative measures as willingly against their own people as against any other. And as these hired soldiers hated the rich people, who had always made and still make mere slaves and drudges of them, it was a great oversight in the officers of the Orthodox Army and Navy to permit retaliation. Dr. Juno, having been a man of extensive foresight, who fully comprehended human nature in all its numerical phases, saw all these things in advance, hence was prepared to take advantage of everything. He told his men that their enemy should surely retaliate, and if they did, it would be a great feather in his cap, because such a shiftless, dissipated, and unprincipled set of hireling warriors as they would soon ravish their wealthy masters. Yes, rob their leaders, slay them, and seduce their women, in retaliation for the wealth and power the rich have always had over them. No one should be so big a fool as to think that the poor, the wretched, and even the most debauched had no desire to possess large amounts of filthy lucre. These were the very people who saw the most value in the dirty stuff. Therefore they felt vindictive, and were inclined to retaliate on their employers even before they had received their bounty. They looked upon the war, for which they were hired to shoot people, as a popular way of being paid for murdering innocent people in cold blood by the wholesale. Hence a single-handed murder, in all time to come, seemed to them a trifling offense, as compared with the wholesale butchery to which they were accessory. To the wise, these conclusions are scientific, and the prophecy of these deductions may be seen, in time to come, to be fulfilled to the letter, as they have been in the past. Dr. Juno had all his officers instructed, before the war was known of, in all the important points that would be necessary to successfully consummate the work of the Reformation. He said often to his disciples, "Beloved naturalists, evils must often be exchanged for evils, when false prophets and blind leaders are recognized as the sovereigns of a nation or nations, because all the conditions surrounding the people are, under this state of affairs, unfavorable to the purification and elevation of the race. Hence even the best men and women of such a nation are creatures of morbid circumstances. Therefore, cruel war, to speedily wipe out self-righteous and domineering leaders and their satellites, would be a charity, although a cruel momentary caustic to create a healthful granulation of a malignant indolent sore, which requires the most fiery escharotic to burn out the virus of such a detrimental disease. I am for peace and goodwill to man, but before the calm and balm of peace can come to such a wicked, God-forsaken, lucre-worshipping people as this generation of the bloody conspirators are, we must thoroughly purge this terrestrial globe with fire, thunder, and lightning, and wash the sins of hereditary diathesis from amongst the propagators of future generations. The quickest way to do this, the easier and better the results. Hence an internal war that will strike terror to the hearts of the self-righteous, Bible-hardened, and reckless transgressors of fixed law, will be the only specific panacea for the thorough eradication of our national consumption. This, dear naturalists, is my apology for instituting a rigorous and black flag war, the cruelty and terror of which was never and shall never be known. And if it pleases God that I shall be the greatest sufferer by it, as I have always suffered by adhering to these teachings, I am very willing to hold out faithful to the end, and thank the Spirit that moved me to commence and consummate this work, which I am fully convinced will be finished by you if I should fall in the first battle. Therefore, strike with a glowing heart, and strike vehemently, and do not spare a foe any more than God himself would save an impenitent soul from perdition. So help you God. With such teachings, tactics, and management as Dr. Juno has for years labored to instill into and establish amongst his followers, there was sufficient magical vitality and heavenly bounty bestowed upon them to satiate all with a never-ceasing love for God and mankind. Hence, when they went into the field of battle with a hired foe, they cared nothing for such retaliation as could be heaped upon them. The first retaliation that transpired fell upon the innocent of the conspirators' own flesh and blood, which demoralized an already demoralized and debauched army. Therefore, 20 of these soldiers were not equal to one naturalist. This was proved by the first great battle, which was fought on the western shores of the state of Virginia. General Gossamer had only 2,000 men thoroughly equipped, who were being driven by an orthodox standing army of 40,000 regular soldiers, whilst Dr. Juno pursued the pursuers of General Gossamer with only 5,000 picked naturalists. And when Dr. Juno's brigade had reached the pursuing conspirators' army, he ordered an immediate assault, and General Armington directed the attack, whilst Dr. Juno ordered General Gossamer to turn upon the foe, when 30,000 conspirators fell dead besides the wounded, but only 600 naturalists were killed and wounded. General Armington took the balance prisoners, and Dr. Juno immediately appeared upon the ground to swear into his own army those who were ready to side with the naturalists, and those who refused were shot dead without compunction of conscience. End of chapter 80. Chapter 81 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 81. Captured Conspirators Shot Dead. Dr. Juno addressed the prisoners, who were not too badly wounded to comprehend him, as follows. Fellow citizens and prisoners, we do not war against men for gain, or for glory of men, but for the rights of all who are of woman born, for equal rights, for just rights, for the subjugation of those who possess more than their share of this world's goods, for the subversion of those who pay you with the money which belongs as much to you as to them to fight for them, so that they can continue to usurp every right of mankind and thereby hold you in bondage to their heinous tyranny. But we are here as your friends, the friends of the whole people, who are willing to live and let live as freely as they themselves wish to live. I wish you to join us, and if you refuse, you may know the consequences. Those who desire to join us will move in the direction of our soldiers. Room was made for the prisoners who desired to join the naturalists to walk within the lines of the latter, when all passed over except what remained of 2 regiments, when Dr. Juno continued. Do you, who remain in your old positions, desire to continue rebellious? I will give you 30 minutes to consider the question of either joining our cause and our army, or to be shot dead within that time. You would not dare to shoot us, ejaculated a half-intoxicated and impudent colonel of one of the regiments. Do not be deceived, my misled man, said Dr. Juno, but you will see that I shall do that very thing. Dr. Juno now administered the oath of allegiance to those who were willing to join his army. The following is the oath. You do solemnly swear that you will join the army and cause of the Naturalists, and will never more, by word or deed, aid or abet the orthodox or conspirators' army or navy, but will faithfully obey the commanders of the Naturalists. All those of you who are willing to abide by this oath, or expect to be shot dead if violating it, will signify it by raising their left hands toward heaven, and placing their right hands upon their hearts. It only took a few minutes to administer this oath to a whole regiment, on account of being able to administer it to them all at once, because the answering it with their hands gave the officers a chance to see if all had taken it. When Dr. Juno had finished this task, he said to the rebellious prisoners, "You have 5 minutes to decide between death and joining our army," which caused about 24 more to take the oath, and when they had done so, the same colonel cried out, "Cowards! You do not mean to fight for the heretics. I know you won't. But you are scared by the high-flowing language of this braggadocio. He dare not shoot us, and he knows it. Your time for repentance has expired. Your hour of grace has gone by. Soldiers, prepare to fire." Here a regiment of naturalists formed into a line, when he continued, "Aim. May God have mercy on your souls. Fire." Bang! Off went the rifles, and about 1/2 fell stone dead, when Dr. Juno repeated, "Soldiers, prepare to fire. Aim. May God have mercy on your souls. Fire." When the balance were dispatched, without one prisoner falling to expire at once, except the impudent colonel, who was not yet aimed at. When Dr. Juno saw this, he said, "Providence or chance has saved your miserable life, and before I will order you to be shot, I will permit you to say what you now think, whether I dare not shoot you." "Sir," quite humbly said the colonel, who seemed fully sobered by this time, "you are a brave man, and if you will permit me at this late hour, I will cheerfully fight desperately under so heroic a commander as yourself. I pray you, accept my offer." "Certainly, sir," responded Dr. Juno. "Come and take the oath, and you may be of great service to us, if for nothing else but to warn others, who in the future may be of your opinion. I do not desire to shoot men in this or any other manner, but war means surrender to the strongest or death, and this is the only way to strengthen and make an army victorious. If I may be so bold as to ask, are you not afraid that these compulsory deserters might turn upon you, when an opportunity affords?" said the colonel. "Not at all," smilingly answered Dr. Juno. "We are guarded against that, and our remedy is specific, which you may see some day." "I hope so, indeed, since I have become a naturalist," said the colonel. "But your most generous and sound sense address to our men, previous to ordering any of us into your ranks, then touched my better nature. Still, I felt ugly toward all of you, and I must say without a cause, for I am already convinced that your motives and teachings are misunderstood by the great majority of our soldiers." "May God open the eyes of all before one more drop of blood is spilled," sadly responded Dr. Juno. "Amen," came from hundreds of the men, and some of them had large tears in their eyes, caused by the sincere, earnest, and impressive manner in which Juno said, "May God open the eyes of all before one more drop of blood is spilled." Let the reader, for one moment, think of a man who had suffered for nearly half a century the most barbarous martyrdom, and when he had it in his power to speedily annihilate every one of his enemies and become dictator, he could utter the foregoing sentence and act upon it. Was this not enough to cause the Spirit of Christ to hover around the hearts of all who saw such an act by man? Could anything more noble, more Christ-like, more God-like be done by sinful mortal? And could any heart be so stony as to spurn such an achievement? End of chapter 81. Chapter 82 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 82. The Religious Conspirators Dumbfounded. The newspapers all over the country published the proclamation and army orders of Dr. Juno, which, however, few but his own people believed he would execute. But after he did so, the whole orthodox world was dumbfounded. In fact, they could not believe that the man lived who would assume such a responsibility as to inaugurate such black deeds as shooting dead prisoners of war. But such was the case, and many of the public journals denounced Juno as an infamous tyrant and dastardly usurper, whilst the liberal press approved of this novel but effectual warfare. The President ordered a draft to be made for 500,000 men, and issued a proclamation ordering the guarding of every arsenal in the Union. But he was too late, because 7/8 of them had already been in secret possession of the naturalists, and by the time the draft was fairly begun, over 900,000 naturalists were in the field, equipped with the military trappings which were stored in said United States arsenals. Even the war vessels had nearly all been in possession of the naturalists, which was a dreadful state of affairs. There was but one thing left for the orthodox people, and that was to offer immense bounties, amounting to $5,000 and $6,000 for good, able-bodied soldiers who were familiar with tactics, and half as much for green men. This was sufficient inducement to raise an immense army and navy, the President having by this time made an additional call, making altogether over 1,000,000 of men. But, alas, when the officials of the government that was, the orthodoxy, went to the various arsenals for the implements of war, great Mars, they were apparently empty. The muskets, cannon, and accoutrements had fled, and what to do with this immense army and navy, and not enough weapons to equip one half of them, was a stunner. This news was kept as secret as possible. The orthodoxy would not expose it, because the effect would be fatal to their cause, and the naturalists would never divulge their secret operations, hoping, however, to astonish their enemies when the crisis of war would come. There were many excellent generals in the orthodox army, who were on the field, and who mustered and marched all their equipped veterans toward the main army of Dr. Juno, hoping and expecting to outgeneral him, and, if possible, take him prisoner and shoot him, as he shot their men. A terrific battle was fought in the southern part of Ohio, where the army of the naturalists lost 10,000 men in one day in killed and wounded, which made things look blue. But in less than 24 hours they were reinforced secretly, or unexpectedly, to the orthodox army, when the wheels of fortune were immediately reversed, and over 30,000 conspirators fell dead in 6 hours. 10,000 prisoners were taken, and the balance of them escaped the fire and wrath of Juno's men. The same day the prisoners were again challenged, as before, when about 2/3 of them could not resist Dr. Juno's appeal, nor cared to be summarily sent beyond this shoal of tears. The persistent and rebellious ones were shot dead, except 4 orthodox generals, who, of course, could not join the naturalists, and they felt certain Dr. Juno would not shoot them. He addressed them as follows, after he had the balance shot. "Brave soldiers, you are the leaders of a misled and drunken people. You have deserved 10 deaths, where these poor soldiers that have just fallen at our hands have scarcely deserved death. But my way of carrying on war is greatly different from old customs and usages, and all who are fools enough to join your army and navy cannot expect any better than death if caught in rebellion against the sovereign people's rights. Although you deserve instant death, I will still not have you shot until such time as I find it necessary for my own safety to shoot you. I do not believe in policy in times of peace, but in the terrible hour of war good management points me out the plan I am about to institute. I will retain you as hostages, and should any of my generals or myself ever be taken as prisoners of war by your people, I will now issue my order that if we are shot, or whatever ill usage we shall receive, shall instantly be given to you in return. If you have anything to say, now is your time. I make it a rule never to execute or imprison a foe without giving him an opportunity to fully vindicate himself by words, if he can do so, and I hope I shall in all future time be granted the same privilege, which, however, your people have denied me for nearly 25 years. Yes, they have closed the newspaper columns against me, have robbed me and mine of every right that God and a free republic permit their subjects. And since you and yours have started the war, we mean to finish it in prime order. Now I shall be happy to hear from the intelligent gentlemen who stand before me." "Noble sir," said the eldest of the four, "we have never before been able to appreciate your excellent character, and although you have always done business in an original manner, we have not given you credit for being so great a philosopher and general as your novel tactics prove you to be. It is said that still waters run deep, and I have been of the opinion a month ago that you could not raise 10,000 soldiers, but I now see that, whilst you seem to be apparently still of late years, you have been running deep, working almost wisely in secret. And, although I am your prisoner, I do not fear that any insult or injustice shall be visited upon us, whilst your hostages. Therefore we shall cheerfully submit to whatever you dictate." "You flatter me," responded Dr. Juno, "but whilst I harbour no malice, I am nevertheless not easily gulled by flattery. But I may never find it in my power to repay the debt I owe the leaders of the orthodox conspirators. Still, I will assure you that you will never harm yourself or my cause any more. And if I did not see the necessity of using a little policy in case of a mishap, I would shoot you with as little compunction of conscience as I would kill a snake. I mean this kindly, because duty cries aloud for such kindness to the little ones, and as long as the accursed doctrines of the orthodoxy rule, human souls will be sprung into existence at haphazard, through lust and assumed chastity, whilst the land will be flooded with criminals to the manor born, who are reared with less science and care than farm brutes or vermin. End of Chapter 82. Chapter 83 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 83. Dr. Juno writes to his Lucinda. Dr. Juno ordered that it should be kept a secret that these hostages, the 4 generals, were alive, until such time as he saw fit to permit its publication. He said, "Let the enemy think that we have shot them as well as the common soldiers." He now wrote the following letter to his beloved Lucinda. Headquarters of the Army of the Naturalists, December 19 My dearly beloved Lucinda, I have great cause to thank God and the working people for the advancement of our cause. I have just taken many prisoners, and amongst them 4 of the greatest generals that this country can produce. I did not shoot the latter, but wisely retained them, my darling, for hostages, because I may some day fall into the enemy's hands. And I will here say that I expect some immense fighting shortly, and whilst I have it kept a secret that I have not shot the generals, I wish you to keep posted in all that transpires. And should your father, myself, or other naturalists be taken prisoners, I desire that you at once execute the plan that I have left to your hands, and should they kill me, do not despair, my most precious darling, but carry out my will as you have it with you. The secret order of naturalists will obey you to the letter in carrying it out. I do not wish to distress you, sweet angel, but you know I am amongst the army, and often in the thick of battle. But the angels guard the soul of man who proves faithful to God's cause. Should I never see you more, which, however, I hope to do, be assured that as my spirit liveth, it shall whisper comfort into your soul, and when you come home, where parting shall be no more, we will have cause to praise God with such delight that the supremest joys will quicken and eternally magnify our great love for Him and one another. We do not die, but simply go to our Father who is in heaven, when the spirit leaves this mortal coil. And I do not fear him who can destroy my body, but cannot harm soul or spirit. I dress like a common soldier when in battle, but on other occasions I wear my uniform as general. I am well and in excellent spirits. Be of good cheer, and give my love to all who may honor me sufficiently to inquire after my health. And, most dear angel, keep a mountain of my warmest gushing affection for your holy self. Farewell, and may heaven smile upon us all, and upon our enemies, and upon those particularly who I am compelled to send hence so speedily. From your own faithful Victor. Headquarters of the Army of the Naturalists, January 19 . My precious darling, I hastily take my pencil to write you particulars of the state of our position, and the intention of the enemy. I have just heard from 3 naturalists, who are in the conspirators' army, and whilst we are never entrenching ourselves very strongly, we have on this occasion thrown up strong breastworks. But we shall tomorrow morning, at 6 o'clock sharp, go for the enemy, and your father, General Gossamer, and myself shall be in the heat of battle until we win the day or die on the field. Our 3 spies say that the enemy is making its best effort to whip us, and if they fail this time, all is over with them. But if they win, they expect to retaliate and rout us and speedily end the war. They do not know what we know. Do they, precious dear? They have 3 men to 1 of ours. Still, that is nothing. But if you hear that we lose, arouse the naturalists all over the Union. Do it anyway, as soon as you receive this letter. The Orthodox army is awfully demoralized, and many of their officers are fashionable topers, who are setting a bad example to their men. But with us it is otherwise. Considering then that we are clear-headed, and they nearly all intoxicated, who can doubt what the result will be? Still, we may lose the battle. At any rate, this is to be the fiercest butchery that was ever fought on American soil. Arouse the naturalists, and fear nothing, my sweet dear. Trust to God and the right, and all will be well. Farewell, darling. I remain until death your own Victor. Terrace Garden, January 9, 1900. My own dear Victor, I received your last letter about an hour ago, and whilst I am no coward, still I am afraid that sooner or later you will fall into the enemy's hands, when they will shoot you in retaliation. I do not wish to lose you and live myself. Should you be killed, I promise you that I will instantly take your place and fight to the death. I am not revengeful, but I am sure that you are in the right. And as I love you, equally so do I love the cause for which you have jeopardized your precious life 1,000 times. And when you are gone, what have I to love or live for but that which you loved, lived, and died for? The Orthodox community are fairly in a foam about your Black Flag proclamation and its execution on the field of conflict. They denounce you in the strongest terms that language can express, and if they are not afraid of the working people and naturalists, they would set a reward of millions on your head. I assure you, most precious Victor, that I am and have continually been arousing the naturalists in an effectual manner, and I am making hundreds of converts to our cause daily. If you are the head in the field of battle, I am the head in the field of conversion. Trust me with anything that may aid you, and I will add it with a vim. Precious Victor, please write to me as often as you can, for I am awfully anxious to hear from you personally, although I am very busy in arranging regiment after regiment, which I fill up by my secret workings and by lecturing in public. I suppose you will feel astonished at this, but I cannot be idle and grieve, like too many women who would do under similar circumstances, whilst I am capable of practically helping you and the great cause of mankind. I find a woman can do more than a man to arouse the sympathies of thinking minds, and although several attempts were made to insult me when I was addressing large audiences, your friends soon settled the unruly members. I am now fully called for, therefore excuse my abrupt closing, but accept my warmest love, and believe me to your own most affectionate Lucinda. End of Chapter 83. Chapter 84 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 84. The Fear and Distress of the Conspirators. It is often astonishing how long it takes the masses of the people to accept, or before they are even willing to examine, anything that is novel. New ideas and new discoveries or inventions are spurned, are the conjurations in public esteem of some brainless seeker after lucre. Probably this conclusion is arrived at by the masses because they themselves are guilty of doing nothing that does not bring money or its equivalent, hence the above-named conclusions. Oftentimes the most useful and logical matters must be kept floating before the public gaze for years before any of the modern patterns of society will behold the grandeur and superiority of such useful and logical matters. For instance, look at the public press, which should be and is the moulder of the public mind. These men, who own and edit the newspapers, claim to stand at the head of the pile of moralists and humanitarians. But whilst they look upon long-established unphysiological and abnormal usages as the legitimate institutions of the land, they overlook and even spurn the establishment where new ideas, new to them but old as the world, are presented to the gaze of the people. These journals will collect all the murders, rapes, thefts, and other crimes that are committed over the world, and fill their columns, local and editorial, with these heinous and disgusting sins of criminals to the manner bred and born, and send this olla patrita to all the Christian families, where innocent, dear little children are fed on it, which has the effect upon these undeveloped minds to cause a desire for the sumptuous dishes which come through criminal courts and crime-publishing newspapers. Whilst these heathen owners and editors of this public mind-molding press have looked for many years upon the science of sexual physiology, secrets of generation, and normal regeneration with a holy horror, they nevertheless profess to be the guardians of the public and private morals, whilst they were themselves besmeared with criminal slime from crown to toe. Consistency seems to be no part of such men's acts, as little as it is with the lethargic minds who spurn new ideas, inventions, and discoveries. But when the people once begin to see through such a criminal code of morals, they change like magic, and then the obsolete matters will be instantly forgotten, and will be treated as stupid and worthless. It has been so from time immemorial in all things, and it is equally so with the scientific teachings of Dr. Juno. The whole people now applaud him, and those who, several years ago, have spurned and persecuted him would now kiss the ground he walks on, if they were privileged to do so. Many cannot even yet see the propriety and need of advocating the fixed laws of human generation and regeneration. But to the wise a hint on this subject will suffice. These are the two topics which have caused one continual round of distress to the orthodox conspirators, simply because if such practical, scientific piety were carried out by all who increase and multiply, that false religion of the conspirators, which is founded upon conjecture, would receive a permanent death, and this bitter spirit of persecution of the man Juno, who advocated the only bona fide piety, would not have taken place. Consequently, this war, and the terror that now prevails amongst the orthodox conspirators, would not exist. These bigots and self-righteous drones are paying heavily for their folly. Very, very few respectable people stand by them, and they are all as much in fear of the working classes and naturalists as they used to despise these sovereign people of America. Who but sensualists, drunkards, gluttons, misers, and selfish dupes are their satellites and hireling soldiers? Not an honorable, decent person would, even at the close of this 19th century, be counted as a partner of their religion or illy-gotten lucre that was unjustly wrung from the working people by all sorts of cunning and craft, as is too well known to their dullest followers. Today, these people are in terrible fear and distress, from the fact that they see that the bone and sinew of the land are exacting their inalienable rights, are demanding the long-standing account to be summarily settled, which was due to them many years ago, but was haughtily withheld from them by these political and sectarian usurpers. These false guides would cheerfully, this moment, sell their birthrights for a mess of pottage, and join the cause of the naturalists if they would be sure that they would be accepted, and thought they could extricate themselves from their Augean filth and stereotyped blasphemy. They have by far the largest army, but their leaders lack courage, their soldiers are debauched, their women are downcast, and in fact the whole thing looks bad, viewing the matter from an internal standpoint. Of course, the world at large is not acquainted with the true state of affairs, and it is now the time when the leading but gloomy conspirators can practically and excusingly apply their hypocrisy by keeping up the deception that their army and navy are by far the most numerous, which is their only salvation to this hour. For if their own people, throughout the sectarian world, would know the true state of affairs, 7/8 of them would prove false to the bad cause of orthodoxy and leave it, joining the strong and safe side, because these people are awfully afraid to die. You can hear them continually lament that it is a serious thing to die. If they were the saints they profess to be, they would rejoice when the hour of their departure for the blessed realms of angels would arrive. In fear and trembling, the orthodox conspirators are pushing the war with all their might, and the cry is, "This coming battle will win for us. Our army is immensely large. We have the very best generals. The navy is in a good state, but of little use in the coming fray. Hurrah for the Orthodox army!" End of chapter 84. Chapter 85 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 85. Terrible Battle Fought, Dr. Juno Shot and Lost. At last, the hour had arrived for the critical conflict to begin, and it did begin with terrible fury, in the southern portion of Ohio, through Indiana and Kentucky, until the Ohio River was dyed crimson with the gore of human beings. At first, the conspirators' army dashed into the field as though they were going to fairly swallow up the naturalists, but the brave heroes did not fear them very much. At least, the manner in which they repulsed the right wing of the conspirators' army proved that they were prepared and ready for the fray. This flank movement of the naturalists fairly routed and ruined the conspirators, and in their flight they were shot and cut down like chaff. However, the conspirators were very heavily reinforced when they made a stand which caused a considerable commotion against the naturalists, whose time for a repulse came in turn, and they were driven back in good order for 10 miles, but only 700 prisoners were taken by the conspirators. And what seemed very peculiar was that only about 2,000 naturalists were killed and wounded, whilst over 60,000 conspirators were crippled and slaughtered. The latter seemed to fire too high. Whether this was owing to drunkenness or mismanagement of the officers was not known. Still, they made a poor impression on the sober naturalists. When the report spread that the latter were driven north into Ohio, a new uprising and influx of naturalists took place, when the conspirators were again routed and were driven, bloody and worn out, through the Ohio River in double quick, many having been taken prisoners. Many were drowned who ran into the river, and finding it too deep to wade, and could not swim, sank to rise no more. These scenes were heartrending and revolting. It was Dr. Juno's black flag proclamation that caused the enemy to risk their lives in the river, rather than be taken prisoners, to be summarily shot down like dogs. When the army of the Naturalists reached the Ohio River and found that the enemy was demoralized, Dr. Juno ordered his men to pursue them, whilst he was at the head of a brigade, dashing forward like infuriated demons. Those who could swim he ordered to wade and swim, whilst his immense cavalry force swam their horses, and the ammunition was carried across the water on flat boats, pontoons, and over the old bridge, which the conspirators had not time to disturb. Now the climax of carnage and horror approached. Both armies were heavily reinforced from every available point, and in Kentucky the next to the last and worst battle was fought. Dr. Juno kept pursuing the enemy until he could go no further, on account of the conspirators having received immense new supplies of men, who fought like envenomed veterans. And the Naturalists on the northern side, where Dr. Juno's division was so fiercely pursuing the conspirators, were repulsed furiously, and quite a great many Naturalists fell dead and wounded. They did not run, but fought until they reached the Ohio River again, when Dr. Juno was riddled with bullets and the balance of his army had to surrender. Over 30,000 prisoners were taken, Dr. Juno included. But at the same time, the army of Naturalists under General Gossamer, from Indiana, were pressing vehemently upon the left wing of the entire conspirators' forces, whilst General Armington had an immense fresh army marching from the east upon the right wing of the enemy. Under these circumstances, the conspirators had no chance to either shoot or guard their prisoners, who were immediately rescued and again joined their own army, when the conspirators were making tracks for their fortifications in the southwestern portion of Kentucky, where they were pursued and reinforced. Thus ended that terrific battle, but neither army had many prisoners, except the wounded, who were kindly treated by both parties until such time when the black flag was swung over those who refused to take their respective oath of allegiance. One thing must be said to the credit of the conspirators, that they rescinded their order or permission of retaliation, and each Naturalist prisoner had to be tried by court-martial before he could be punished. Their own people all over the Union demanded this in respect to their old customs and usages. However, there were other things pressing down against advocating or pursuing the course that Dr. Juno instituted. First, they found it too dangerous for their hired and demoralized army to be allowed to shoot prisoners in retaliation. And second, their entire community could not bear to let their army do what all of them so severely denounced as barbarous and uncivilized. It was this very cry against Dr. Juno's black flag conduct that united the orthodox people. Had it not been for this cruel course, which Dr. Juno inaugurated and carried out, not one half the people that did unite themselves in active warfare would have taken any interest or part in this war. Dr. Juno knew all these things in advance, and he also was aware that the conflict would be much more severe by the course he adopted than it would have been had he followed the old usages. Still, his way proved to have been, after all, the wisest, most charitable, and practical. Dr. Juno could not be found by the Naturalists, but by mere chance a brother saw the conspirators carry him alive from the field dangerously wounded, which the Naturalist kept quiet. But this fact caused an immense stir amongst his people. End of chapter 85. Chapter 86 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 86. Miss Armington takes the field when she finds that Dr. Juno is gone. When the news secretly spread amongst the secret societies that Dr. Juno was either dead or a prisoner of war, Miss Lucinda Armington issued a proclamation through the newspapers, and also sent it far and near by telegraph to the working men and naturalists, which was given in hieroglyphics, so that none could comprehend it except the members of the secret societies. It was to this effect: Terrace Garden, blank 19 blank. The hour has come when our hero is no more with us. He has been shot at the head of his brigade in the retreat on the 7th instant, and is now in the enemy's hands, either dead or alive. Probably they are not yet cognizant of it. I need not say that this is a terribly distressing affair to me personally, as well as it must be to the brotherhood of the people, and it behooves us to make Herculean efforts to rescue him, whether he is dead or living. If he is no more to be with us as a friend and a benefactor, let us nevertheless obtain his body and finish the war for the people. I have promised my beloved Victor, in our last interview, that if he fell on the battlefield, or was otherwise deprived from seeing this work completed, that I would take his place and fight and labor until I too followed him or gained the victory. This was his will, as expressed in a written document now in my possession. I therefore proclaim to you, the loyal subjects of my devoted and betrothed husband, that I will take the field at the head of the army of naturalists, and I hereby call for every available able-bodied man that can be secured to instantly join our army and navy, and by at once, in secret, attacking the enemy on all sides, we may finish this cruel work of warfare by one united gigantic blow, and thereby obtain the body of Dr. Juno. General Gossamer will rally and control the western portion of the army. My father will take charge of the eastern divisions, and I will see to that part of it which can be centered upon the enemy from the north. 1 week from today, at 8 o'clock in the evening, I have appointed for a united clandestine movement upon the conspirators. In the meantime, the enemy shall be made believe that we are nearly used up, and cannot take the aggressive for months. This will cause them to relax their vigilance, when half of their officers will get drunk with bad liquors, and the men will imitate their masters and superiors, as is always the case. Admiral Cunning I hereby order to advance his ironclad navy up the Ohio River as fast as possible, and although he cannot do any particular harm to the enemy where he now is, still, when the land forces shall scatter the conspirators, he shall be able to cause a river of blood to flow in horror. The sisters of our secret order of naturalists will cooperate with the soldiers, and each regiment will have a free supply of them with it to prepare food, do nursing, and attend to such duties as they feel disposed to voluntarily perform, and such as will be assigned them by the officers. Remember the hour for the united assault, and be it particularly understood that I order that the proclamation and army orders of my betrothed husband, Dr. Juno, shall be carried out in all cases as if he were upon the field. Given by the successor of Dr. Juno, who will instantly repair to the headquarters of the Army of the Naturalists, by Lucinda Armington. This proclamation of Miss Armington had a most salutary effect upon the entire country, and the working men and naturalists rose as one man to slay the enemy. Every word of it fell upon holy ground, and mind, muscle, and money were lavished in every conceivable manner to carry out this proclamation of the betrothed lady of the lamented and most beloved Dr. Juno. The females were ready to shoulder arms all over the Union. At a public meeting that was held by the ladies the day after this loyal document was issued, the following resolutions were unanimously adopted. Whereas our beloved benefactor and loyal master, Dr. Victor Juno, has won a great battle on the 7th instant, and whereas several of our men have fallen into the hands of the enemy, who may execute them summarily, and whereas we, the female population of the United States, feeling a great interest in the cause of humanity, shall instantly cooperate with the Army and Navy of the Naturalists, and whereas we desire to see this war ended, that peace and good will may come unto all the working people, Therefore, resolved that we recognize the proclamation just issued by Miss Lucinda Armington, the affianced wife of Dr. Victor Juno, who will preside at the head of the army of the people during the illness of Dr. Juno, and that we shall lend our assistance toward the subjugation of the enemy, and solicit the cooperation of our sisters throughout the Union. Mrs. S. T., President. Miss R. K., Secretary. Headquarters of the Army of the Naturalists, blank 19 blank. I hereby order that my proclamation be strictly observed, having this day learned that our beloved Victor is a prisoner of war in the hands of the enemy, having been penetrated with bullets without injuring a vital organ, and he is recovering very rapidly, as he always does. At any rate, I understand that he is to be tried by court-martial on the very day I have mentioned in my proclamation. You are all familiar with that, and I hereby enjoin vigilance and punctuality, giving extra dignity and power to the cause. The rest remains to be seen on that auspicious day. Heaven grant that the right may conquer. Lucinda. This terse little order was published to the world, but no one but the naturalist understood the whole of it, as the proclamation was not published to the world, but only to those who understood the hieroglyphics of the secret societies. It kindled a fire of fury and determination in every loyal breast. Dr. Juno a prisoner of war, and to be tried by court-martial! Great powers above! Was the unanimous impression. Surely he will be shot forthwith, unless the conspirators dread his followers. The following sentiments were freely expressed by the sympathizers of Dr. Juno. The Orthodox army dare not shoot Dr. Juno. We will make it too hot for them to do so in the next 24 hours. Dr. Juno will make a speech before that court-martial that will magnetize his enemies with dreadful horror, and come away unharmed. If Dr. Juno is allowed to speak before he is shot, he will defy the enemy. When the conspirators learn that Miss Lucinda Armington has taken Dr. Juno's place at headquarters, and has ordered the execution of his first proclamation, they will not find him guilty of crime. If the court-martial will sentence Dr. Juno to be shot, they will find it entirely too dangerous to execute the sentence. If Dr. Juno is shot by the conspirators, it will cause a terribly revengeful feeling throughout the world, because his motives and movements have been all too unselfish and philanthropic to deserve death. Beware, O Pharisees, how you insult and handle our heroic master. End of chapter 86. Chapter 87 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 87. The Trial by Court-Martial of Dr. Juno. After the Orthodox conspirators had lost nearly one-half of their men in that dreadful battle just fought, they were very blue, although then their army was safely inside of their strong fortifications, until the news came that Dr. Juno had been shot and was their prisoner in one of their hospitals. No one knew him until he had been carried amongst other prisoners to a hospital, and then not until the surgeon had dressed his gunshot wounds, of which he had 20, no one fatal, when one of the nurses recognized him, who at once went to the physician and said, "Dr. Johnson, do you know that the man who has had 20 wounds, neither of which you said was dangerous, is Dr. Juno?" "You are crazy," ejaculated the doctor, and stared at the nurse as if he would devour him. "No, sir," emphatically exclaimed the nurse. "I am not crazy, but I am telling you the truth, for I know the doctor well." "Pshaw!" interposed the doctor. "He was a private soldier, dressed in the commonest manner. He may resemble Juno, but never was it he." "If it is not he, you may shoot me," exclaimed the nurse, very much agitated, "for I have spoken with him, and I know his voice as well as my own, and it is not likely that I am deceived in his voice and personal identity. Please come with me and see for yourself." "I don't know him if I should fall over him," said the physician angrily. "Therefore my going to see him would not benefit anything." "We will ask him whether it is not he," interposed the nurse. "Fool! Do you think he would be big enough an idiot to tell the truth?" ejaculated he. "For if Juno was dressed in a private soldier's disguise, he will not acknowledge that it was he were we all to ask him, knowing that such an acknowledgment would prove his instant death." "Yes, he would," exclaimed the nurse. "I know him too well. He is no coward nor dissembler. Do please come and let us ask him. You know the reward that is offered for his capture. We may be entitled to it by this move." "Sure enough," said he. "I will go with you." They hurried to the bedside of Dr. Juno, who was sleeping as serenely as if he had never seen a care or had a trouble, when the physician said to the nurse, whilst they both gazed upon his manly face, "Tom, this man has an uncommon face, and he sleeps as if he were in perfect health and enjoyed a happy life. I hate to wake him, because he is recuperating like magic under the influence of such a sleep." "Never mind all that," said the nurse. "He will soon sleep again." "That may be so," exclaimed he. "Here it goes," and he touched his shoulder and said, "Dr. Juno, is that you?" "Yes, sir," ejaculated Dr. Juno. "What do you want?" This almost paralyzed the physician, when he asked again, seeing that the man was now fully awake. "Sir, I wish to know if you are Dr. Victor Juno." "I am," very calmly said he. "Do you know where you are, Dr. Juno?" continued the physician, still doubting. "Of course I do," said he, and turning slightly in his couch, continued, "I am in my enemy's hospital. Now please let me sleep, and when I am better I will gladly speak with you." The two inquirers of the name of their patient now left the room together, and after they were beyond Dr. Juno's hearing, the physician said to the nurse, "Tom, this man astonishes me. I am favourably disappointed with him. I always thought that he was an ugly-tempered and rascally old fellow, without sense or conscience. But such a head as this man has shows talent and good qualities. I did not notice him when I dressed his wounds, or would have seen by half a glance that noble countenance. I love and respect him." "Is it possible that you are so violently taken with the man who has caused this most unjust and cruel war? And then think how he shoots our soldiers when they are taken prisoners. I want to see him shot in return for his uncivilized and barbarous conduct," said Tom. "I do not wish to see him shot. He is too noble a looking man to execute in that style. Have you read his masterly proclamation and army orders? They are sound in doctrine, and, if carried out, will soon end the war and prove a real charity," exclaimed the physician of the hospital. "I shall at once repair to the office of General Orthod and report what I have learned," said Tom. When the officers of the conspirators had learned that Dr. Juno was their prisoner, they at once convened a special court-martial, and in a few days, when he was able to sit up, they tried him. The day of trial and other particulars were published to the world in all the orthodox newspapers, in staring headlines. The orthodox people and army and navy were in high glee over this sudden downfall of the naturalists, for they were certain if Juno was no more, the war would instantly close on their own terms. In this they were very, very much mistaken, as this state of affairs caused an opposite effect. They, at any rate, considered that the naturalists were well nigh exhausted, and as soon as they found that their leader was taken prisoner, they would yield and sue for peace. From these conclusions they considered that they would make haste slowly. They would recruit their army, and after disposing of Dr. Juno, would offer terms of peace. They found the celebrated prisoner recovering so rapidly that they thought, if they would not give him his trial and execute the sentence quickly, he might escape from their clutches. The leading members of the court-martial agreed to visit Dr. Juno in the hospital, and ascertain from him if he was able to appear at court. Some of them thought that he would feign to be worse than he was, to cause a postponement of the trial. General Orthod asked him, "Dr. Juno, we have convened a special court-martial to try you, and I wish to know if you think you are well enough to attend court tomorrow." "Well, sir," said he, "I have considerable pain in several of the wounds, but I am strong and very well at heart. Therefore, I shall be delighted to appear at the special court which you have had the kindness to convene for my benefit." "All right, sir," responded General Orthod, and added, "Can we serve you in any way?" "No, sir, I kindly thank you. I have all I need, and he who wants more in time of cruel war is no Christian," responded Dr. Juno. These remarks were very bold, decidedly cool, and to some of them seemed sarcastic. They caused the officers to discuss Dr. Juno's sang-froid with deep anxiety. In sooth, they felt more fear and concern about the easy manners of the prisoner than the latter did himself of the trial and its results, which was a stickler. The following conversation took place concerning the matter. "General Orthod, please tell us, what do you think of the self-composed and easy manner and monstrously cool language of our prisoner?" asked a colonel. "Indeed, indeed, I am more puzzled than I have ever been in my whole life," responded the general, with a sigh, and remaining silent, stared, as it were, upon vacancy, which was an uncommon thing for him to do, and which caused the rest to feel very superstitious about the matter. After exchanging several other remarks, they parted to meet in their courtroom the following day at 10 o'clock in the morning to try Juno. End of chapter 87. Chapter 88 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 88. The Court-Martial Tries Juno. The hour of 10 in the morning had arrived, and the officers constituting the Juno court-martial were all present, when General Orthod said, before the prisoner was in court, "Gentlemen, I have had some very strange forebodings since we have had that interview with the heroic prisoner, who is about to be arraigned and tried before us this morning. And as I am the presiding judge in the case, it is my duty to act according to the usages in such cases. Otherwise, I would much rather be excused in having a part or parcel in the case that we are called to pronounce upon. This man Juno is, to say the least, a brave enthusiast, and I believe that he feels that he is in the right. But that cannot save him from summary punishment at our hands." "I agree with the general," said Colonel Sanctiblower, son of Judge Sanctiblower, "but I am determined not to falter in the rigid performance of duty." The general then ordered the prisoner to be brought into the court, after which the doors were thrown open to spectators, who crowded the room to its utmost in a moment. Dr. Juno was brought into the court by 4 officers, who assisted him to walk, having been too lame, from the wounds he received at the head of his army, to walk without considerable assistance. He was placed into an easy-chair, which the sympathetic physician of the hospital had ordered to be provided for his august patient, whom he desired should be as comfortable as he could make him whilst he lived, even if he would be shot afterwards. After everything was arranged, and the court called to order, a lengthy silence ensued, which partook of the nature of a Quaker meeting, causing everyone to feel as though a solemn hour was at hand, and more solemn work. At last General Orthod said, in a tremulous voice, "The court is ready to proceed with the trial of the prisoner. Are counsel ready to proceed?" The prosecuting attorney responded, "We are prepared to proceed." Dr. Juno was asked to stand up, when the clerk of the court said, "Victor Juno, you are charged with high treason and murder. How say you, guilty or not guilty?" "Not guilty," responded Dr. Juno in a cool and composed manner. "Dr. Juno, have you counsel engaged?" asked General Orthod, to which he replied, "No, sir. I will be fully competent to act as my own counsel." "The court is ready to hear the case," said General Orthod. The prosecuting counsel rose and spoke as follows. "Your Honor and gentlemen of the Commission, it becomes my painful duty to charge the prisoner at the bar with felony of the highest grade. Firstly, this indictment charges you with high treason and inciting to mob law. Secondly, it charges you with cold, premeditated murder of innocent persons, who have fallen into the hands of the rebel horde, which you claim to control. Thirdly, it charges you with riot, robbery, and malfeasance of office. The line of prosecution which I propose to pursue is that of the second charge, cold, premeditated murder, which is ample to find a verdict for the states for murder in the first degree, the penalty of which, in times of rebellion, is death by shooting. I will not ask this commission to hear useless testimony, neither will I take up their precious time with the discussion of minor charges as found in this bill, but content myself with proving that you, Victor Juno, the prisoner at the bar, are guilty of shooting men dead, contrary to the usages of civilized life. Will George Henry Atkinson take the witness stand? After being sworn, the witness testified as follows. I was in the next to this last battle, which was fought in the southern part of the state of Ohio. Myself and several thousand other soldiers of the Union were taken prisoners, and, after the fray was over, as Dr. Juno's officers marched us toward headquarters of the prisoner at this bar, Dr. Juno, I slipped away and returned by good luck to our own army. The rest were all shot by the order of Dr. Juno. Prosecuting Attorney. Were there any of our generals taken prisoners? Witness. Yes, 4. P.A. Name them. W. Generals Cadwell, Stew, Paney, and Pierce. P.A. Were these 4 generals also shot? W. Yes, sir. P.A. Do you know whether our wounded men were kindly treated? W. Yes, sir. They were very kindly treated, and were very skillfully doctored, were very soon cured up, but were shot as soon as well enough to stand upright. P.A. Did this Dr. Juno, the prisoner at the bar, himself order them to be shot? And did he not give them a chance to defend themselves? W. He did himself order all to be shot, but he gave them only this chance of defense, that they should voluntarily take his oath of allegiance and go into his army at once, if well enough to do so. If they refused, they were shot. P.A. Cross-examine. Dr. Juno. Did you see anyone shot, with your own eyes, in the manner you have stated to this commission? W. No, sir, I did not see anyone shot, but I was told so, and read your proclamation and army orders to that effect in the newspapers. Dr. J. You should not swear to what you hear, or what you have read in the newspapers. It is not a sound doctrine. That will do. I have no more questions to ask. William N. Snigglefritz, sworn. Prosecuting Attorney. What do you know of this man, the prisoner at the bar? W. I know nothing but what I have heard and read in the newspapers. P.A. That is not legal evidence. That will answer. General Orthod. Mr. Snigglefritz, were you a soldier for the Union in this present conflict? W. No, sir, not exactly a soldier, but I have been with the army. G.O. What did you do with the army? W. I sold liquor and tobacco. G.O. To whom did you sell liquor and tobacco? W. To anyone that would buy. G.O. If I catch you again at that work, I'll have you court-martialed. Mind me. W. Yes, sir. Gustav Fierce, sworn. Prosecuting Attorney. Where are you from, and what do you know of Dr. Juno, the prisoner at the bar? Tell us all about it. W. I will. I was a spy in the army of the working men, and saw all your drunken soldiers shot in battle and after battle. Dr. Juno was always doing his duty, and he was always sober, too, a thing that I cannot say of the Union army. P.A. interrupting him. Stop, Fierce. You talk entirely too fast, and too much that is irrelevant to the subject. Tell us, did you ever see or hear the prisoner shoot or order anyone to be shot, who was a prisoner of a war? W. Yes, sir. I have seen the prisoner shot, and have heard the prisoner say to his men, "Be sure you shoot well, aim well, shoot fair and quick." In fact, the prisoner is a practical, clear-headed, and sober man, which is more than you can say. P.A. Stop, stop. W. Yes, sir, I'll stop, but— General O. You must not speak any more than you are asked. W. I don't, for he told me to tell them all about this matter, and I simply complied with his request and told him what I knew to be a live fact, for really I consider Dr. Juno the best soldier and purest man living. P.A. Now stop, sir, or I'll send you to prison. W. Oh, goodness, do you think that you can scare me with prisons? No, sir, I'm a native-born naturalist, although I do not belong to the secret order of naturalists of which Dr. Juno is the founder and father. P.A. That will do. I have no more to ask. W. But I have not yet finished. P.A. Never mind that. Let go. Leave the stand. W. I won't do it. Dr. Juno. Your Honor, may I be permitted to cross-examine this witness? General O. Certainly, sir. Dr. J. Mr. Fierce, were you in our army when Generals Cadwell, Stew, Pansy, and Pierce were taken prisoners? W. Yes, sir, indeed. I was at home at that hour. Dr. J. Do you know if these generals, Cadwell, Stew, Pansy, and Pierce, are alive, or were they shot? W. They were alive 3 days ago. You know that you retained them as hostages. Dr. J. That will do. This testimony of one of their own witnesses, a loyal saint, as they thought, and one of their own spies, who spied, however, more for Juno than for them, put a damper on their feelings, which caused the laying of heads together all around the courtroom, and the astounding exclamation could have been heard everywhere, "Generals Cadwell, Stew, Pansy, and Pierce held us hostages and not shot! Great heavens!" End of Chapter 88. Chapter 89 of The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Social War of 1900, or The Conspirators and Lovers, by Simon Landis. Chapter 89. Honorable Bluster Gibbon's speech before the court-martial. Half a dozen more witnesses were examined, but nothing positive could be proved that Dr. Juno had either himself shot or ordered any prisoners of war to be shot, and according to orthodox customs, no one can be convicted on such evidence. Moreover, it was proved by what the orthodoxy considered her best witness, Mr. Fierce, that Generals Cadwell, Stew, Pansy, and Pierce were alive to this day, and were held as hostages, which looked badly for the conspirators' court-martial. Nevertheless, they had to carry the matter through. Therefore, the prosecuting attorney closed his remarks in the following speech, in which the spectators evinced little interest. Honorable Bluster Gibbons, prosecuting attorney's speech. Gentlemen of the Commission, the duty is incumbent upon me, as a loyal man to my God, to the elect, and to the country, to argue this case in such a manner as to do reverence to our holy cause. Gentlemen, you have listened with great interest to the witnesses who were this morning examined. If we were not, each of us, fully assured that this Right Reverend, this Doctor of Divinity and Doctor of Medicine and Psychology, was guilty of the crimes of riot, treason, and cold-blooded murder, I should have more to say about the matter than I probably shall in the few remarks which I propose to submit to you in this case. Gentlemen, you and I have no business to entertain any feeling about this case. We are simply here in the performance of a high public duty, simply to vindicate and sustain the majesty of the laws under which we live, simply to protect that most sacred right that any of us may claim as our home or constitutional right, the right to execute the invader of old established usages, the murderer of prisoners of war, such as the prisoner at the bar is. Gentlemen of the Commission, you have heard the testimony of the witnesses, and you know, without witnesses, that this man is guilty of murdering our brave soldiers, as if they were dogs, as if he had the right to trample upon the sacred usages of all civilized countries. I hope this progressive Christian, this Right Reverend Bishop Juno, is not to carry us back to the age of Mohammedanism, or to the Dark Ages. The assurance of an innovator like he, to dare to shoot our men as if they were mere cattle, not even giving them a chance to defend themselves, as you here permit him to be defended. Why, gentlemen, he should have been immediately shot, as he shoots our men, whom he has taken on the field. Yes, we should not give him an opportunity to open his impudent mouth. He has always been a perfect nuisance to decent Christian people. Look what he has not done to disturb the peace and comfort of the religious community. He was justly been arrested and imprisoned for publishing and circulating obscene books. Books that were so lewd, filthy, wicked, and infamous that the same were too offensive to go on the records of the criminal court in which he was convicted, and that is bad enough, God knows. Gentlemen, you are called upon to give a verdict of murder in the first degree, and by so doing you will remove a stumbling block to grace divine, a bugbear to the liberty of the saints, because you are all very well informed how this man at the bar has, for a quarter of a century, thrust himself impudently into the face of every decent man, woman, and child. His harangues to the sensual masses he has everywhere delivered, until he has so agitated a bad cause as to proselyte thousands, and with these dupes he has instituted this most barbarous, gigantic, and atrocious rebellion. And unless you, gentlemen of the Commission, find him guilty of the highest crime in the country, and forthwith sentence him to death, and order his execution instantly, this war will continue. Once he is removed from terra firma, then farewell rebellion. I hope every person within the reach of my voice agrees with me in this view of the question. Why should we hesitate in doing or delaying our duty in this plain business transaction? Let us vindicate our cause whilst we have it in our power, whilst we have this malignant upstart, this reverent tyrant, this butcher of human beings, who has no more conscience and heart than a tiger or an infuriated bull. The testimony is ample to cause his speedy conviction and execution. Look at him, how cool, hardened, unconcerned, and lost to shame he is. A man who is guilty of such crime as this right Bishop Juno is, should repent in sackcloth and ashes before the avenging hand of justice sends his impious soul, if he has any, into the presence of a wrathful Creator. Of all the brazen-faced, egotistical, and self-elated scoundrels, this wicked wretch beats it. Of all the calm-headed cutthroats and presumptuous braggadocios, I must assert he is the quintessence. If there were any symptoms of insanity, if he had any slight signs of not being compos mentis, we might have some sympathy for the creature. But a non-compos mentis could not wield the mighty influence for evil that this prisoner at the bar has done. He is a self-made demon, who can speak so plausibly to the masses as to cause them to believe that he is the most learned and wise man, when he is moved by Satan, guided by imps, and sustained by the cheek of all that is infernal and damnable. Who of you, my hearers, doubt this? Who of you doubt anything that I have said of this deliberate murderer? I will wager all that is sacred to me that, if this honorable court will permit it, he will make an attempt in a harangue to justify himself in every crime that he has figured. He is so lost to decency and good breeding that his conscience is seared, and it is only sport to the wretch to murder our innocent soldiers. And if he had us this moment in his power, as we have him, he would order us to be drawn into a line, and place a cannon at one end of the line, and blow us to glory like dogs. Yes, like he did our soldiers in every battle where any of our men fell into his dastardly hands. In conclusion, gentlemen of the Commission, I do not wish to insult your intelligence, nor continue to argue with you as though you were also conscience-void, like this beast at the bar. Although he looks self-satisfied and composed, but I assure you that he is almost scared to death. Yes, I can at times see an expression on his countenance that shows his dread of the result of this just trial. Let us make an example of this leader of the greatest mob of ruffians that ever breathed breath. Who are his followers and rioters? I will tell you. The greasy, dirty mechanic, the common laborer, the offscouring of the land, who are not good enough for us to wipe our feet upon. Yes, these stinking working-men make up his so-styled army and navy, who have stolen our war implements by a series of secret society movements, knowing well enough that by fair means they could not have given us so much trouble. Gentlemen, I am not going to doubt your morality, your virtue, your Christian graces. I am not going to suppose for a moment that you mean to stand by and justify this flagrant violation of law by any further remarks upon this subject of these atrocious wholesale murders. I shall simply present the testimony to you under the charge of rigid justice, and will ask you to find a verdict of guilty of murder in the first degree. End of chapter 89.